Welcome, everybody, into the ESPN FC studios for this, the latest edition of the show. Alongside Shaka Hislop, Steve Nicol, I'm Sebastian Salazar. Great to have you with us. Very special day, as we will unveil the latest edition of Shaka's Power Ranking. I know you've been
that is a special day.
So excited for that. The algorithm very busy this afternoon here on the ESPN campus. Let's start, though, with some news out of the Premier League, the continuing story around Arsenal's injury woes. Of course, Kai Havertz injuring his hamstring during a training session in Dubai. The club confirming this morning that he's going to have surgery in the coming days. He's out for the season. Hamstring's a big problem for Arsenal. Of course, Gabriel Martinelli, he's still out for at least another month with his hamstring. Bukayo Saka's already had a surgery on a hamstring. He might be back by early March. Best case scenario, Gabriel Jesus out for the season. He did a knee back in January, and that's just in attack. Some defensive injuries as well. Ben White, Takehiro Tomiyasu. As the injury woes continue to pile up for Arsenal, we welcome in our good friend and colleague Ian Darke for a little bit of commentary here. We heard the guys talking about Kai Havertz on yesterday's show. It's interesting, Ian, he's a player that gets criticized so much, and now the story is how big an impact this is going to be for Arsenal's potential title chase. What do you make of the Havertz injury?
I think it could be absolutely huge, because imagine if another of the strikers like Leandro Trossard now got injured as well. It looks like Trossard is going to have to play the kind of false number 9 role. He's done that before, but they could have to play Raheem Sterling. They could have to play the 17-year-old Ethan Nwaneri from the start of games. So it's looking very thin. And, of course, Arsenal's decision not to sign anybody in January, and may not have been a decision. They may just have not got any deals over the line when they didn't. And that's looking quite expensive now. So I think it's a huge blow, because, Havertz does get a lot of criticism, but he scores a useful amount of goals. He did last season. He did this as well. He's quite physical. He wins balls. I think he's in the top 10 in the Premier League for winning aerial duels. So it is a big hole.
Chuck, I'm thinking back to the Carabao Cup match against Newcastle. They had Havertz in that, and they were hardly dangerous enough. Without Havertz, without all those injuries, can Arsenal, just in attack alone, be dangerous enough to kind of continue this title chase?
Well, Arsenal's, with or without Kai Havertz, Arsenal's ability to chase down Liverpool, I think, hinges a lot on Liverpool right now, given the distance that is already exists between the two. And yes, without Kai Havertz, you do wonder what the options are. Not that Kai Havertz was by any means a solution. We've had that discussion all season long. But when you look at what else there is, it leaves you scratching your head even further. So where exactly does Mikel Arteta turn? Now, I've felt Nwaneri, I think, would serve well through the middle. But of course, he's been needed on that right-hand side with Bukayo Saka's continued absence. You say early March, let's think probably more mid to end of March before he's back, or at least back to where Arsenal
contributing significantly, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Maybe then you can shift Nwaneri through the middle and see how that works for you. I like the look of him. Young, inexperienced, yes, but I think he's very talented footballer. So you give that a go. Other than that, I'm not sure, because as much criticism as, again, we've kind of leveled at Kai Havertz, Raheem Sterling is by no means any kind of an improvement.
Stevie, I was surprised watching yesterday's show. You were maybe a little bit more willing than Craig, but neither of you guys was willing, as a result of this, to kind of rule Arsenal out. What do you see from Arsenal? What's the evidence that makes you not want to rule them out yet?
Well, because previously they have scored goals from the middle of the park and they've scored goals from set pieces. So we shouldn't forget that. But they're going to have to rely on it. That becomes the problem. I think we've said enough about the front three. Nobody's picking any of those front three, certainly not in the top 5 or 6 sides in the country or the planet. Nobody's picking any of them to play up front for them. And so really it comes down to the middle of the park. And the likes of Odegaard has to pick up the mantle, and Rice has to do the same.
But that formula hasn't really gotten them close to this point, so why would it start to work now? When we're already taking away massive parts of this attack.
I'm not saying it's going to work, I'm saying it has to. They've got themselves in a point where they have to. You know, every team relies on the front players to score the goals. And if you can get goals from the middle of the park, set pieces, whatever it may be, then they're kind of a bonus, but they find themselves in a situation where they are now relying on the middle of the park and the set pieces. to get them goals. There's a complete different when you've got to try and win a Premier League and you want goals coming from set pieces all the time. I mean, that's why it's almost going to be impossible, but it's not quite there yet.
Ian, how realistic do you think an Arsenal title push would be right now, given everything we know about this team and the injuries that are piling up?
Yeah, well, I'm like the guys. I don't rule them out completely, but this just made it a heck of a lot harder, and it was hard enough already with Liverpool. 7-point lead. Doesn't look like Liverpool are going to drop that many points between now and the end of the season. Significantly, they do have to play Arsenal again, but that game is at Anfield. They have to play Everton again, which could be another steamy affair like it was last night. But, it's Liverpool's title to lose, isn't it? And it got very much harder for Arsenal. I think they'll have to hope Saka gets back sooner rather than later.
Shaka, what do you think is more likely here? That Arsenal close this gap to a point where last day of the season, there's still something to play for, or Liverpool win by more than the 7 points that they have an advantage now?
I don't think come last day of the season, it will be one of those where you've got two screens up and trying to figure this out. No, whether it's less than 7 points, almost depends on Liverpool. If this title is won 4 or 5 weeks before the end of the season, you could see Liverpool pulling the handbrake up and just kind of coasting through to the end of the season, especially if they go deep in the Champions League and the gap maybe becomes 4 or 3 or whatever, but it's not a realistic 3 or 4.
I mean, is it crazy for me to think that it's much more likely that it would be 8, 9, 10, that the lead would grow?
It's just that if let's say the gap is 9 points with 3 games to go, I could see Arne Slot playing his FA Cup team that played against Plymouth for the last 2 or 3 games, especially if he's got Champions League games to come and he's trying to rest players and maybe rotate a whole lot more, and then you drop points. So if that happens and all of a sudden the gap come last day of the season or end of the season is 3 or 4 points, it feels close, but the truth is it wasn't really that close.
The gap, 7 points right now. Speaking of Liverpool, the English press, of course, still going on about Wednesday's incredible finish in the Merseyside derby. What scenes we saw there at Goodison Park. 2-2 the final score after the late drama. But, Mersey mayhem. They think it's brawl over and mayhem on the Mersey. So great headlines there. Of course, one man we didn't hear from in the post-match was Liverpool manager Arne Slot, because he was one of a few people that saw red, along with Curtis Jones and Abdoulaye Doucouré after the full-time whistle. Liverpool captain Virgil van Dijk had this to say. Obviously, you saw how they celebrated the goal, and they have every right to. I think the ref didn't have the game under control, in my opinion. Both teams have to deal with it. It is what it is. We just need to move on. That's not all that incendiary, but let's take a look at the numbers in this game, because this is interesting, right? Liverpool has 63% possession, and yet they committed 20 fouls to just 9 for Everton. Is that what Van Dijk's getting at, Stevie, when he's talking about the ref losing control?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think there would probably be a lot of frustrated Liverpool players. So we're a couple of minutes from the end of the game. You've got Mo Salah on a break, on his own, with 3 defenders, and gets fouled. And referee Oliver doesn't give the foul. Now, he'd been given fouls like that, particularly on Ndiaye on 2 occasions. He's been given free kicks for that all game. But yeah, with 2 minutes to go, he doesn't give it. And Everton go up the other end. Then there's another question whether Kanate gets shoved. And then the ball ends in the net. And then the mayhem starts. So you can understand why Arne Slot is not a happy camper. Because yes, he's got a point from the game, but quite frankly, two of the goals that Everton got, or both goals they got, absolutely are questionable.
Ian, what do you make of it? You agree with Stevie? And beyond that, Van Dijk, did the ref lose control of this match?
No, I don't think he did at all. I don't think the players helped him one bit. They were diving all over the place. They were feigning, trying to get decisions. I mean, I loved the game. It was a blood and thunder, old-style throwback game, probably like the ones that Stevie played in back in the day. Everton went about it in a pretty rough-house way. They wanted to shake up Liverpool, wanted to ruffle their feathers, and they did. Beto gave Kanate and Van Dijk a really hard night, I thought, and Everton deserved their point. It was Everton's night. It was Goodison Park night, a great last derby at Goodison Park with a fantastic end with Tarkowski equalising. So, Yeah, okay, you can question Michael Oliver's decision, but the players weren't helping him.
You know, Ian and myself in particular are of a generation where games like this happen.
Spared you there, Shaka.
It's all right, you carry on.
You look younger than us, son.
Keep it between you and Ian.
But games like this were 10 a penny.
Right,
This
right.
was if there was 10 games in the league or the Premier League,
They all look
8
like
of
that,
them
right?
looked like that. But the problem is Michael Oliver and the rest of his buddies in the refereeing circles have no experience of refereeing games like this, really, because it only happens at places like Goodison. Because it's so tight, because it's so small, and the specific atmosphere that it brings. And so, in some ways, I can give Oliver a pass, because he's never refereed a game like this.
What
But
do you
the one
mean? I mean,
thing
he's obviously refereed at Goodison.
the one thing he doesn't get a pass on is when he's given fouls for one side and he's not given the same foul for the other side. That's the frustrating bit from a player and a coaching side.
What about the fracas post-match, Shaka? Does Decore cross a line, or is all fair in a rivalry like that?
You know, I'm right on the fence with this, in that I've seen players kind of celebrate demonstratively as Decore does, even though it's in front of opposing fans, but he's on the pitch. He doesn't cross that line. And in the past, I've said, I'm okay with that. You get a lot from the crowd as a player, and as a player, I think you're allowed to give some of that back, and Decore certainly does that on the park. At the same time, though, the reaction from Curtis Jones is exactly, if I were doing that in front of opposing fans, I would expect that. I would expect somebody to come and give me a clip round the air. I would expect that fracas. I'm inviting it. So on the one hand, again, kind of leaning into the, let's call it the old school nature of this game, because I'm in total agreement with Ian and Steve on this. And again, to Steve's point, this was a difficult game for any referee to manage because of the nature of it. So whether he lost control or not, that's just derbies for you. Those post-game reactions, those are derbies for you. But when you react like that, you know what to expect. We did it in our day. We knew what to expect. We knew the outcome. So all in all, no, I don't have an issue with it, nor do I have an issue with any of the fallout as a result.
Stevie, any issue with Jones' reaction? Or did you love it?
No, I'm with Shaka.
Like in that dressing room, will they be patting him on the back for that? Will that be well received?
Yes, it would.
Because most red cards are not well received. Is the
Yes,
point,
it would.
right?
If I were playing for Liverpool, if I were a Liverpool fan, I'm applauding Curtis Jones there. I absolutely am. And to the point, and again, maybe we're a little bit more old school than this. It wouldn't have ended on the pitch back in our day.
No.
This would not have ended on the pitch back in our day. It would have continued. But you knew that.
Yep.
If you decided to do that, you knew what you were inviting. And don't be surprised by it.
And I can assure you, particularly at Everton, because getting off the field and going to the changing rooms at Everton, there just happens to be this lovely little tunnel that nobody can see anything, that's packed full of people.
Yeah, and it's not very wide, huh?
And I think more than a few years ago, Decore would probably not have made it to the dressing room.
All right.